Hello and welcome back to the MJ channel. It's Tuesday, May 13th, 2025.
Great to be here.
Today on the MJ channel, we're doing a deep dive into the Canadian cottage and recreational property market.
Yeah, it's a fascinating segment.
Absolutely. This one's especially for you, our MJ channel viewer, if you're keen to understand what's really shaping this part of Canadian real estate right now.
And we've got some good reports to dig into. One shows a pretty big shift in who's actually buying these places.
Right. And another looks at the economic climate, things like tariffs and how that's maybe making buyers a bit nervous.
Exactly. So the idea is to pull out the key insights for you.
We want you to get the trends, the potential opportunities, maybe some challenges too, without getting bogged down in tons of data.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's get right into it. First up, this shift. Who's buying cottages and cabins now? It seems different.
It really is interesting. RE/MAX Canada's 2025 report on this, it shows families are now the biggest group. We're talking 83% of the regions they surveyed.
83%. And retirees.
They're still there, definitely, but they came in at 70% in those same areas.
Wow. That's quite a flip, isn't it? Because I remember back in, 2018?
Yeah, 2018. Back then, retirees were leading in like 91% of markets, a huge majority.
So what's driving this? Why families all of a sudden, or not all of a sudden, but why the shift?
Well, the report suggests a few things. Lower interest rates we saw in the past, for one.
Okay.
Prices may be coming off their absolute peaks, and just lifestyle changes. Younger people thinking differently.
That makes sense. Remote work must play a part too, right? More flexibility.
Definitely seems likely. That desire for outdoor space, a getaway, maybe feels more achievable or necessary now for families.
Right. So if families are the main buyers, how does that change the market itself? What kind of places are they looking for?
That's the key question, isn't it? You might see more demand for, say, larger properties, more bedrooms maybe?
Places for kids, maybe multi-generational use?
Exactly. And maybe location becomes even more about family stuff, activities nearby, community feel, that sort of thing, not just isolation.
Okay, interesting. Now, let's shift gears a bit. Despite some earlier optimism, maybe tied to those lower rates you mentioned, the spring market seems, quiet.
Yeah, quieter than maybe expected. And the reason seems to be economic uncertainty, just a general feeling of unease.
Markets hate uncertainty, right? That's what Don Kotick at RE/MAX said.
Pretty much sums it up.
Yeah.
And a big piece of that uncertainty right now revolves around Canada's stance on tariffs.
Tariffs. Okay, yeah, we hear about that in the broader news. How is that specifically hitting the cottage market confidence?
Well, there was a Ledger survey. RE/MAX commissioned it. It found almost 60%, like 59%, of Canadians thinking about buying a recreational spot in 2025.
Okay.
Who knew about the tariffs? They feel less confident now compared to last year.
Less confident. That's significant because tariffs could mean higher costs for building materials, upkeep.
Yeah, potentially. Imported goods, materials for repairs or renovations. It adds another layer of cost, or at least worry about future costs.
But didn't the survey also say some people were drawn in by lower prices from 2024, about 1 in 5?
It did. So you got this kind of push-pull dynamic happening.
Right. Like maybe it's cheaper to buy now.
But the tariffs in the general economy make you hesitate. Exactly. That's the tension.
Okay. Despite all that uncertainty, though, some people still see cottages as a good investment, like safer than stocks.
Yeah, about a third, 34%, according to the report. They see it as a more favorable investment, maybe more stable than volatile stock markets.
A tangible asset, right? Something you can actually use.
Precisely. And there's another angle, too, travel trends.
Oh, yeah. What's happening there? This is good stuff for our MJ channel viewers.
Well, the report mentioned that nearly half of Canadians, 48%, are saying they're less likely to travel south to the U.S. this year.
Interesting. So maybe staying closer to home.
Could be. And if you're not spending on U.S. trips, maybe investing in a Canadian recreational property seems more appealing. It might boost the domestic market.
Right. Swap the Florida trip for a Muskoka cottage, maybe. Makes perfect sense. Okay, let's pivot again. Affordability, always a big one.
Huge. Still absolutely critical. The survey showed 57% saying an affordable purchase price is essential.
Over half. And what about ongoing costs?
Also important. 35%, over a third, prioritized reasonable maintenance costs. So it's not just the sticker price, it's the whole package.
And speaking of costs and ownership, what about these new rules around short-term rentals? BC, Nova Scotia, parts of Ontario?
Yes, that's definitely having an impact. Those new regulations are making owners rethink things.
So many.
About 19%, nearly 1 in 5 of owners planning to sell in the next year or two, said these new rules are a factor. It hits the investment potential if you can't rent it out short-term as easily.
So those rules could actually increase the supply of cottages hitting the market for sale.
That's the potential ripple effect, yes.
Yeah.
More supply could, influence prices in those specific areas.
Okay. Another trend mentioned, this wealth transfer from baby boomers. How's that playing out in the cottage world?
It's a factor. Among owners planning to sell, 17% said it's partly because the next generation just isn't interested in taking over the family cottage.
Really? A lack of interest?
Yeah, different priorities. Maybe they can't afford the upkeep, or they just don't have that same connection to it. A real generational shift.
Wow. But then on the flip side, you've got people maybe leaving cities because it's too expensive and looking at cottages as primary homes.
That's happening too. The report flagged that 29% of potential buyers are actually considering a cottage as their main residence.
Almost a third. Driven by urban affordability issues.
Seems like it. If city housing is out of reach, and maybe you have some remote work flexibility, it becomes an option. Though the report did note the return to office trend could limit that.
True. Still, it shows how people adapt. Okay, what about across Canada? Is it the same story everywhere, or are there big regional differences?
Definitely seeing regional variations. Ontario seems pretty cautious, likely tied to those economic worries we talked about.
Okay.
But out west, Alberta and BC, they're actually expecting prices might keep growing. Demand seems stronger there.
So different provincial economies, different sentiments playing out, not one single Canadian market.
Not at all.
And just briefly, how does all this connect to the wider housing market, like mortgage renewals? We keep hearing about the renewal cliff.
Right. Well, it seems maybe less of a cliff and more of a curb, perhaps. Some analysis, like BMO looking at Bank of Canada data, suggests the average payment increase in 2026 might be around 5%.
Okay, maybe not catastrophic for everyone, but still an increase.
Still an increase, and more importantly, the general economic uncertainty, including those tariffs, it dampens confidence across the board. For buying a main home or a second home like a cottage, people just get more cautious.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. For our MJ Channel viewers tracking recreational properties, what are the main things to take away right now?
Well, the big one is the demographic shift families are now the primary buyers, overtaking retirees. That's significant.
Right.
But overall activity is a bit muted. Economic uncertainty, especially around tariffs, is making buyers hesitate.
And affordability is key. Plus, those short-term rental regulations are starting to shift the supply picture in some areas.
Exactly. It's a market in transition, really. Lots of moving parts.
So whether you're thinking of buying, selling, or just want to stay informed as an MJ Channel viewer, understanding these dynamics, the buyer shift, the economic factors, it's pretty crucial.
Absolutely. Gives you that context need to make sense of it all.
Okay, so here's a final thought for you to mull over after this deep dive. With these changing demographics, the economic pressures, how might the actual idea of a recreational property change in Canada? What might people look for next? Different features, different locations becoming popular, something to think about.
Definitely something to watch.
Thanks for joining us for this in-depth look here on the MJ Channel.